Hello, I am your launch commentator for the first satellite launch attempt by Subzero Aerospace on the Pyrois 1 launch vehicle. For the past couple of months, we've been launching sounding rockets, but this is going to be our first attempt at making an orbital flight attempt. The satellite carries a scientific payload that will measure the atmosphere composition up in low Kerbal orbit. And we are go for launch. The countdown will begin in a few seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, main engine start, 2, 1, liftoff. Liftoff of the Pyrois 1 launch vehicle carrying TestSat 1 for the first satellite launch attempt for Subzero Aerospace. Engine chamber pressures appear to be nominal as we roar over the skies of the KSC, and we will be pitching to the east using the rotation of the planet Kerbal to help us into orbit. There we go, our pitch program has begun, pitching to the east. This is the base Pyrois design. It can accept up to 4 solid rocket boosters, but we are not flying those today because they are nowhere near necessary. This payload only uses about 50% of what the Pyrois can actually launch into orbit. And we've now switched to external cameras mounted on the second stage of the launch vehicle. You can see the engine flame about exactly on the center of the screen. Appears we're getting a little bit of some glitches in the transmission there. You can see the green flashes, but those appear to have dissipated now. And you can get a good view of the KSC, and the continent of Africa will slowly rotate into view as we continue to pitch east, as our rocket gets more and more horizontal. So the next event that will be happening is second stage jettison, and that will be coming up here in approximately a minute as we continue first stage flight. All chamber pressures look nominal. Flight is going nominal. We have not lost a suborbital sending rocket, which are much easier than this. So we are very nervous, but we are very excited that we can finally make this launch attempt. So we are getting into the atmosphere here. And the KSC is starting to fade from view now as we head up into the atmosphere, as the continent of Africa rolls into view, and the curvature of the planet will soon become very prominent and very visible. We're going to have first stage cutoff in a couple of seconds here. Just waiting for that event. And we have first stage cutoff, first stage jettison, and second stage ignition. And the second stage is now roaring to life, and this stage will take us to orbit. The next event is going to be payload fairing jettison, which is also coming up in a few seconds at about an altitude of 50 kilometers. So that event will be coming in about 2 seconds. And we have payload fairing jettison, and there is payload fairing on the camera. And we have good telemetry from the second stage engine. And RCS on the payload is starting to pressurize. Second stage cutoff will be coming very shortly after this. The second stage only needs to go a little bit. And the second stage is now shutting down. We've had a little bit of an oscillation here, most likely due to the second stage gimbal being cut off and the RCS of the stage taking over to control as we continue our rise. So now we're going to drift for quite a bit of time until the burn that will place us in orbit, the orbital insertion burn, and that will be happening in a few minutes here. So I think now would be a good time to talk about what the plans of Subzero Aerospace is in the future. So we are going to be launching TestSat 1 and TestSat 2, and TestSat 2 is going to be a launch to Kerbal stationary orbit. in which the satellite will orbit at the same speed as the planet Kerbal rotates. It will test communication payloads, because we do need to set up a communication array over the planet of Kerbal. Currently, the satellite will only be able to transmit information when it is above the horizon of our tracking station at KSC. After we get the communication network set up and a bunch of science probes, we plan to do manned missions, as well as launch weather satellites and Kerbal imaging satellites, including a synthetic aperture radar device that we're going to be launching on a satellite pretty soon. Moon missions, MINMIS missions as well. There was a little thing in the bottom right corner. Not sure what that was. We're going to have to check in on that later. But, yeah, that is what the Subzero Aerospace plans to do. That's what our future research department is currently designing and doing base research on. Our teams are currently constructing the second Pyrois vehicle to launch TestSat 2, which is, again, the communications payload. Communication payload test that will be launched into Kerbal stationary orbit. That will require possibly solid rocket boosters on the Pyrois as a test of the Pyrois with solid rocket boosters in that configuration. So we will have to see. The Pyrois can take 2, 3, or 4 solid rocket boosters. So we are still waiting here for second stage reignition, which should be happening in a few moments. And the second stage is throttling up, and we have reignition of the second stage, performing the orbital insertion burn. And it will throttle back down here in a couple seconds to do the final insertion. And it is throttling down, and it is on its final throttle level. And yes, we have second stage cut off. We will bring confirmation of orbital insertion in a few seconds here. And we do have confirmation of orbit. TestSat 1 is in orbit with its upper stage, and we will bring you simulated images of that satellite here coming up next. So this is a simulated image of TestSat 1 in orbit. It is currently flying near Impact Crater C as it orbits to the east and the mountains directly to the east of Impact Crater C. As you can see, it has 4 solar panels. However, after orbital deployment, one of the antennas refused to deploy. The teams are currently trying to troubleshoot that, and hopefully they can open the antenna. But it can, in fact, fly with 2 of 4 of its antennas open, and we do have 3 of 4 antennas open. But I will see you later. We will come at you soon.